Are there amendments? Senator Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I am offering an amendment that I hope it's being distributed now to remedy some of the unintended consequences that have occurred since changes were made last summer to the hours of service regulations governing truck drivers. These are regulations that were issued by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and implemented in July of last year. Now, there has been, unfortunately, a great deal of misinformation that has been circulated about my amendment. So let me start in reverse order by making clear, contrary to the claims of some organizations, what my amendment does not do. First of all, it does not impose or propose a permanent repeal of the hours of service regulations. Some of these provisions have been in place for nearly a decade, and I am not trying to alter them. In fact, the amendment does not even suspend all of the changes to the hours of service regulations that were implemented in July of last year. For example, this amendment does not make changes to the maximum number of hours per day that a driver can be behind the wheel. That is 11 hours. It does not change the mandatory 30-minute meal or rest break during a shift, which was adopted last July, which was implemented last July. It does not change the total on-duty window in each shift, which is 14 hours, 11 that you can be behind the wheel, and then 3 other hours that you might be loading or unloading or taking a break or waiting in line, as the case may be. It does not change the minimum off-duty hours required between shifts, and that's 10 hours. That is not changed. It does not change the requirement that will be implemented for electronic onboard recorders. I think those are a very good idea. It does not change the sleeper berth requirements for splitting off-duty time. What my amendment does do, however, is that it provides temporary relief of 2 provisions of the hours of service regulations changes that were made last July while the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration conducts a comprehensive study to see if these changes are truly justified. And the changes that I am talking about are 2 that require, for the first requires that for 2 consecutive nights, a driver cannot drive between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. The second limits the 34-hour restart, the restart of the clock, if you will, to just once a week. Those were changes that were made last July. The fact is, neither truck drivers, nor their customers, nor I, nor anyone in this room ever wants to see an accident caused by driver fatigue or by any other cause. But what has become clear during the past 11 months is that the new federal rules have presented some unintended and unanticipated consequences that are not in the best interests of public safety, truck drivers, or the businesses and consumers who depend on their services. In particular, there's increasing concern that the regulations affecting overnight driving are actually resulting in more trucks being on the road during the most congested hours and during the hours when children are going to and from school. In fact, these issues have prompted the Federal Highway Administration to announce a federally funded grant program to examine how truck deliveries during times when there is less traffic on the road can not only save time and money, but improve air quality and create more livable cities. So here we have one agency in the department acting in a manner that is totally contrary to another agency in the same department. The fact is that many truck drivers work overnight, just like millions of Americans who work the night shift. They want to do so because there are fewer vehicles on the road. The administrator of the FMCSA has testified that the agency's field study did not consider the unintended consequences and safety concerns of forcing more trucks to travel during congested daylight hours, nor did it address how this rule could affect the overnight drivers themselves, forcing them onto the road at a time when they would otherwise be resting. What the bill, my amendment also would do is, and I worked with Senator Murray on this part of the amendment, is to have a comprehensive field study of these two provisions with input from the Office of the Inspector General. And I can go into more details if we need to, but I know others want to speak. Thank you.
Senator Murray.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I wish to be clear, I will be voting against this amendment. The hours of service rule was litigated and debated exhaustively for a decade before it went into effect, and I believe it should stand intact. However, I do want to just say that I appreciate the way Senator Collins has worked with me to develop the portion of the amendment that she just mentioned that directs the department to conduct this field study of the restart provisions. That study, I hope, will provide us the answers to the questions about driver fatigue that are very central to this debate, hopefully once and for all.
Madam Chairman?
Senator Feinstein.
Yeah, I feel very strongly, and I speak from the California perspective. 38 million people, 2 huge ports. 40% of all of the containers that come into this country come in to LA Long Beach. That's a residential area of 16 million people. The containers are enormous. They are 50 feet and close to 60 feet long, if they're double. These containers and trucks just zoom out. They are all over the highway. They no longer are on the right-hand lane. Cars are smaller. Accidents are up. I have no problem with the study, but don't stop the restart before, let the restart rule stand while the study goes. These people, these drivers, work a 60-hour week. What the restart rule does is require a period of 34 hours of rest, including 2 consecutive nights between 1 and 5 a.m. What the statistics show is that this has worked. Let me tell you a little bit about the numbers of truck accidents from large trucks. We've had an 18% increase in large truck crash fatalities since 2009. In just 2012 alone, almost 4,000 people died in collisions with large trucks. That's an average of 75 a week, 11 per day. 73,000 people were injured in large truck accidents. This is a big thing in America. And it seems to me, as I've watched over the decades, everything goes to the trucks. They're all over the road. Their speed is large, the drivers are pressured, and it's a real problem. I think driver safety and driver rest is really important. And the field studies that have been done that measure fatigue among commercial drivers found that this restart rule is effective. So what I'm saying is, leave the restart rule in place and do the study. Don't suspend the restart rule, because right now it's working. So I strongly vote no on this amendment.
Is there anyone on this side of the aisle that wishes to speak? I know 2 speakers on the Democratic side. Let's turn to Senator Blunt, then Senator Landrieu asked to be recognized, and Senator Durbin, then you.
Chairman, thank you. I will support this this amendment. This issue has been litigated and debated. I'm not sure it's ever been researched. And, you know, I asked Secretary Fox at our hearing, our committee hearing, for information on whether they'd ever researched this or not. And he took that for the record. Apparently the record is not going to be completed for a while because still no response. What has happened with this rule is you force many more trucks onto the daylight hours.
Yes.
What the application that we're currently seeing is that you have people on the road during the daylight hours that previously had been on the road in less congested times. I think because there is no evidence that the department has ever calculated the impact that the rest rules would have, that suspending the rules while they try to calculate the impact of the rules is a good idea. I support the amendment and I hope it passes.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I don't often disagree with my 2 dear friends, Senator Murray and Senator Feinstein, and I know there's strong feelings on both sides, but I do support this amendment after a lot of careful consideration and discussion with many of the organizations that are supporting Senator Collins's efforts, for the specific reason that I am convinced that the rule implemented without the proper research by the Department of Transportation is actually making our highways more dangerous, not less dangerous, for the exact reason that Senator Blunt just spoke about. When you make trucks and truck drivers stop driving between the hours of 1 and 5, whether they want to or not, whether it's their sleep patterns or not, it simply pushes more driving to the hours where kids are going to school, when people are trying to get to work, down the crowded highways that Senator Feinstein has beautifully described. Number 2, I just, I don't know, viscerally have an objection to the federal government going so far as to prescribe when people should sleep. I just think this is way beyond where we should be. Way beyond. So the combination of being way beyond on telling people in America when they should sleep. Number 2, having no research to justify the mandate. And number 3, in my own personal experience driving on highways, which we all do with these huge trucks, I just as soon have them drive at night, the rest of us drive during the day. Thank you.
Senator Durbin.
Madam Chairman, there are 2 suggestions here which I would like to address. The first suggestion is this is a meddlesome U.S. Department of Transportation dreaming up new rules and regulation, making it so difficult for commerce. Thank God Congress is here to stop it. This started in 1995 when Congress directed the U.S. Department of Transportation to establish rules on truck driver fatigue and accidents. Plead guilty, my friends. This started with Congress. We told them to do this in 1995. Secondly, how could they possibly come up with all these rules without any research? The answer is they had research, extensive research, in terms of how people react, the impact of fatigue, and they looked at the accidents. 2011, 3,757 people were killed, 88,000 people injured in crashes involving large trucks. There's a front page story in Chicago, Illinois that went on for a week. Vincent Petrella, a tollway worker, was mowed down and killed on a tollway. Next to him was the state trooper Douglas Balder, seriously injured. The truck driver had been on the road for 30 straight hours. He allegedly had only 5 hours of rest before he started operating his vehicle. Vincent Petrello was killed. We also had an incident later in the last year. Trooper James Sauter killed on a Chicago area interstate when the driver of the truck fell asleep at the wheel, working longer than was allowed by law. We can step back now and say, this is about the free market. Let's see where it goes. Or we can step up and acknowledge the reality here. Between driver fatigue, drugs, texting, let's be honest about this. The roads are not as safe as they should be, and it's our responsibility to make them safer.
Thank you.
I talked to Senator Collins, and I talked with the American Trucking Association. I happen to agree with one of her points. I think it really hits home. I would like to have truck drivers to have the option to stay out of the Chicago loop during the busiest time in the morning. I don't think that makes it any safer for them or for anyone else. And if they want to start driving at 3 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. to avoid the congestion in the loop, I think we ought to have at least some consideration of that. So I'd be open to changing the rule. But the other part of it, the restart provision that says after 168 hours, that's 7 straight days, you've got to be off from driving for 34 hours. I don't think that's an outrageous idea. They do need some rest during that period of time. So I think the study makes sense. I'm certainly more sympathetic when it comes to the 1 to 5 a.m. 2 nights in a row because of the reasons that I mentioned. But let's not blame that meddlesome executive branch. It started with Congress calling on them to do this. And let's not suggest that they just dreamed up these hours. There was a lot of research that went into it.
I note that Senator Begich also wants to talk, Senator Tester, and Senator Collins, I know a lot's being said here. So, Begich, are you
It's a question, actually.
No, I know, but I'm trying to see for and against the amendment, and also to give Senator Collins the opportunity to wrap up and whatever. So, are you for or against the amendment?
I'm going to be for the amendment, but I have a question.
Okay. And then Senator Tester, you'll be speaking.
For it.
Senator Begich.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Senator Collins, let me just follow up if I can. On your amendment, just to make sure I'm clear on this, Alaska is exempt. We're in a different situation, so I have no vested interest either way, except I want to make sure the question, you're going to have the amendment suspend it for a year, a study. The study comes back to Congress. Does it come back to this committee or also the Commerce Committee or just this committee for review? And then is your anticipation an additional action based on that? I just want to make sure the process so I understand, because I agree. I think Senator Blunt said it, there's a lot of need for information and research in this area, and I hear what Senator Durbin's saying, but I just want to make sure your process here.
The study would come back to the Appropriations Committee, but also be available to the public, which I think is really important. I certainly would have no problem with adding the Commerce Committee as well, but
it will be available. So
it'll be publicly available.
Exactly. Very good. Again, thank you very much, and Madam Chair, I am going to support it. Alaska is exempt from these rules. We have a separate rules that have jurisdiction over Alaska. But again, thank you very much for your effort, and I'm anxious to see after a year the additional research that will be necessary for us to determine really daylight, nighttime, hours of operation. So I appreciate your effort, and you pared this down quite a bit from your original amendment, if I remember right. Hearing, I think, some of the concerns that people had about some of the other pieces. Am I wrong about that, or am I right?
This is the version of the amendment that I actually drafted. I got input from a lot of different people in drafting it. There were some on this committee that wanted a complete repeal. I was never for that position, but I did try to weigh a number of issues. Although Senator Murray's against the amendment, it is her language that inspired the study, and we worked very closely together on the study to put in certain elements. So, yes, there was wide consultation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Tester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say for the truck driver that goes down the road driving 30 hours on 5 hours rest, he's breaking every rule in the book without this amendment, or with the old rule. They're breaking the rules. He was driving illegally. What this amendment does, and I won't go into the 1 to 5 because we've already litigated that. What this rule is going to prevent is somebody who drives 11 hours and 14, which is the rule, takes 10 hours off, drives another 11 hours and 14, and then might be home and takes a 34-hour restart right then. That 34-hour restart doesn't count because you're only allowed 1 restart a week. So without repealing that, you could have drivers on the road that are even more tired than they would be if you allow an extra restart during a week. And look, a car does not want to get in a fight with a truck because a truck wins every single time. So you want people that are rested. I honestly believe that the Collins Amendment will make drivers more rested, not less.
I just have a question, Madam Chair.
Senator Harkin for a
Just
question.
a question because I don't know which way to vote on this now, but this calls for a study. But am I correct in reading this that these rules that are in effect are suspended during the study?
Only 2 provisions. All of the provisions, for example, governing how many hours you can drive a day, which is 11, how long your shift can be, which is 14, because you may be loading and unloading or taking a break. That's still in effect. The 10 hours off between shifts, still in effect. So this is narrowly targeted.
What is suspended?
What I'm suspending is the requirement that for 2 consecutive nights, you have to sleep between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., which if you're used to working the night shift, makes no sense whatsoever because it throws your body clock off. And indeed, and I want to respond a little bit to some of the information on crash numbers. The latest data that we have from the department is 2011. Senator Durbin was reading from some of that too. The number of crashes in which there is an injury between the hour of 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. is 1/3 of the number of crashes between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. It's much safer to have these trucks on the road during the night hours. The second provision is I would allow that restart, that 34 hours where you're off, which Senator Tester talked about, to be taken more than once a week. It is not repealed. It's still, and it's voluntary, by the way. The restart provision under the current law is voluntary, but if you don't take it, there are different limits that come into effect. It's extremely complex, and and these rules have made it even more complex. But let's say you get stuck in Montana in a blizzard, and you're coming up against your number of hours. So you take you're stuck there for 30 hours, let's say. The inability to only take the restart once a week can really throw off the driver, cause him or her to lose wages, throw off the delivery schedule, and have this perverse effect of actually making them more tired when you combine the 1 to 4 and the restart provision. So everything else, I would say to my friend, everything else, including the new requirement for the 30-minute break, which, by the way, the truck drivers do not like, but I am not changing that. This is a narrowly drafted amendment, and it gets to the point that Senator Blunt says, while there's a lot of research on fatigue, there is not field research to support these 2 provisions, and that's why we need the study.
Well, just to follow up then, but this is an area that I don't know very little about. If Senator Durbin is right, that these were based upon extensive research, and that's how they came up with this, I'm a little bit reticent to suspend something for a study. Would this why can't there just be the study and come back to us next year so we have an updated study on the darn thing?
Thank you.
Because this is
you.
causing real problems. It's causing real hardship for the drivers, for their customers, and I would argue that we're going to see it in public safety as well. Sorry, I know the...
No, that's okay. The vice chairman is eager for a vote. But you know what? I think, first of all, I think we've all now had, unless there's any other people who want to add, we could continue the debate. But I think, first of all, I want to just acknowledge that Senator Collins has always been on the side of safety. So any of you who might view her amendment, this is a woman who I've known now for a number of years, and she is really on the side of safety and now trying to find a solution. I'm really with the Murray position because, and I would hope as we go, whatever is the outcome, we find a sensible center on this amendment. I think there could be unintended consequences. I think we want more research, and yet at the same time, there is an apprehension about suspending the rules for now. So, and if there ever is a chair, a subcommittee chair, and a ranking member who know how to find compromise, it is. I also have a situation, I have Maryland families who have really either lost, I've had Maryland families who have lost loved ones due to trucking accidents. One of whom is here today, Mr. Gubatori, who lost his son Nick on I-95. A truck driver was carrying a load of steel. He didn't get enough sleep. He ran over Nick's car. Nick would be in his 30s now. He died. The Slattery family was coming back from a trip from Ohio. Again, truck driver fatigue caused a terrible accident. The mother died. The little boy was left with a massive head trauma. Mr. Slattery would like to be here, but he can't find child care for this dear little boy. So what we're trying to find here, and I acknowledge my business community's talked to me too, what we're going to try to find here, we're going to vote on the amendment, and then I would encourage as we go to the floor if there would be a way that we could do this. But I want to note, I thought this debate was excellent. And what impresses me about every member of the committee is we're all talking about how is the best way we could achieve safety because of these questions that are unanswered, but not at the same time while we're trying to deal with the questions around unintended consequences, we don't suspend the rules. I will be supporting Senator Murray, but we're not antagonistic to the Collins amendment. So if there's no further debate, I'd like to be able to move to a vote. Senator, are you asking for a roll call vote? Okay. Did you want to wrap up, or does that? Okay. Senator,
I think I probably said enough. But no, I appreciate your comments, and again, the fact is that the department did not examine the impact on safety of having more trucks on the road during the congested hours.
Okay. The clerk will now call the roll.
Mr. Leahy.
No.
Mr. Harkin. This thing were separated up, I could vote for Harkin.
Well, that's what we'll try to do after this. The vote now is here. How does the senator wish to be recorded? Senator passes. Senator Murray.
Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Johnson. Ms. Landrieu. Yes. Mr. Reed. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Tester. Mr. Udall.
Mr. Udall votes no by proxy.
Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Baggett. Mr. Coons. Vice Chairman Shelby.
Aye.
Mr. Cochran.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. McConnell.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Ms. Collins?
Aye.
Ms. Markowski?
Aye.
Mr. Graham?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Kirk?
Aye.
Mr. Coates?
Aye.
Mr. Blunt?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Mr. Hoven?
Aye.
Mr. Johans?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Bozeman?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Harkin?
Won't make any difference, no.
Gee, I thought I might have you once.
Chairwoman Mikulski?
No. By a vote of 21 to 9, Senator Collins' amendment is agreed to.